I think it's pretty safe to say that this is probably the most corrupt Treasury Department in our nation's history. And while you dance around questions to protect Trump, Americans are suffering in Trump's spiraling economy. Inflation is now rising faster than average hourly wages.
Congresswoman Linda Sánchez walked into that hearing with a Supreme Court ruling in her hand and a very specific and very simple question built around it. And what followed was one of the most legally precise and most personally uncomfortable exchanges Scott Bessent has had to sit through in any of his congressional appearances. Because Sánchez was not going after him on policy philosophy or asking him to defend abstract economic decisions, but was asking him to explain why the Treasury Department under his leadership is doing something that a Supreme Court ruling already said the government cannot do. And the gap between what the law says and what his department is doing is not a matter of interpretation or a question of competing legal theories, but is a documented contradiction that Bessent had no clean answer for, and that got more uncomfortable the more directly Sánchez pressed on it. And make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video, and watch this.
Mr. Secretary, do you believe that all Americans should follow our tax laws?
Yes, Congress.
Yes, good, so do I. And do you believe that for those Americans who break our tax laws, they should be audited or held accountable?
Well, I think there are two things there. An audit is not a result of breaking the law.
Yes or no? Simple question.
Well, no, it's not a simple question. It's
okay, then let me break it into two. Do you think they should?
If you're asking me,
please don't
should every
interrupt
taxpayer
me.
be audited?
Please answer that. I came here for answers. If you came here to waste time, I'm going to try to make sure you don't do that. Do you believe that people who lie on their tax returns should be audited?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that people who break our laws should be held accountable, our tax laws?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very simple. Not a hard question. I'm glad we agree. So why is it that you are allowing President Trump to have complete immunity from being audited?
Again, I'm going to have to refer you to my previous statements. And
what was your previous statement, sir?
That I am unable to comment on any of the ongoing litigation.
Okay, can you name the ongoing case concerning President Trump's immunity from audit?
Sorry?
Can you name?
There are three cases.
Can you name them, please?
That are out there now, and I will be happy to get back to you on those, because again, I am not a lawyer.
Okay.
We are represented by the DOJ.
Great. You said that you can't because there's ongoing litigation. You'll get me the name of the ongoing litigation, because the only ongoing litigation that I know of is surrounding the $1.8 million slush fund, which has already been suspended. The fact is that the judge's ruling in the litigation that references that slush fund only addresses the anti-weaponization fund. It doesn't even address Trump's immunity from audit. So I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the judge's order in the Floyd versus Department of Justice case.
Without objection.
Thank you. Now, Secretary, you said you're not an attorney. Is that correct?
Mercifully.
Okay, well, I am, and I'm actually proud to be an attorney and know the laws, and I know how to read a judicial ruling. Furthermore, I know that since 1962, the Supreme Court has held that ongoing litigation does not prevent someone from testifying in a congressional hearing. So once again, I'm going to ask, why are you allowing President Trump and his family to have complete immunity from being audited?
Again, since you're a lawyer, you will understand that the U.S. Treasury and the IRS are represented by the Justice Department and the Acting Attorney General.
Yes, but I just mentioned a Supreme Court case that doesn't bar you from testifying. It's pretty clear to me, though, however, that you're not interested in answering questions. You're interested in arguing. Let me ask you this question. If President Biden amended a prior tax return and claimed that he was owed $1 billion, do you think that that would be audited, or should it be audited?
I'm not going to talk about any.
Because you're not really here to answer questions. I don't understand why you wouldn't audit that, and I don't understand why you wouldn't do the same for President Trump. So the ruling, by the Justice Department,
do you have specific knowledge of an audit of President Trump?
Excuse me. It's my time. You're not here to ask me questions. I'm here to ask you questions, and hopefully you're here to try to answer some of them. I'm curious to know who counts as Trump's family for the purposes of this immunity? Is it his children, his in-laws, his grandchildren, his second or third cousin, his great-great-grandchildren? Do you know the answer to that question, Mr. Secretary?
Again, I imagine you have the Justice Department phone number. I suggest you call them.
I'm not the one that runs the Department of the Treasury or that oversees what is happening with this immunity
And
has been granted.
I'm not the one either. We follow the instructions of our lawyers, and we obey the law,
I
Representative.
hope that you're proud of your performance today, Mr. Secretary, because
I hope you get some social media
it's pretty
clips.
safe to say that this is probably the most corrupt Treasury Department in our nation's history. And while you dance around questions to protect Trump, Americans are suffering in Trump's spiraling economy. Inflation is now rising faster than average hourly wages. Gas prices are at an all-time high with the war in Iran. The cost of groceries has risen 3.2% over the past years, and prices on most goods have gone up because of Trump's tariffs. So I don't see how you could call that anything other than a failure of the most corrupt Treasury Department in history.
Your time has expired, Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Secretary, I would love for you to respond to the accusations at your department.
Chairman, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Last year, one of President Trump's first actions was to put his billionaire donor, Elon Musk, in charge of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. By the end of Musk's short but destructive tenure, DOGE had nearly quadrupled its original budget, lost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in estimated interest and fee revenue, and paid 200,000 federal employees roughly $22 billion to stop working. DOGE was a massive failure. It turns out moving fast and breaking things and having no clue what the heck you're doing is not the most efficient way to govern. Unfortunately, DOGE's destruction wasn't limited to wasting taxpayer dollars and gutting the federal service. DOGE staffers also abused their position to gain access to taxpayers' sensitive private data. Mr. Secretary, on January 31st, 2025, you personally granted DOGE access to one of the Treasury Department's payment systems at the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. This database houses Americans' most sensitive data, including Social Security numbers and bank account information. Shortly after, my colleagues and I requested the GAO review DOGE's unprecedented access to this critical payment system. GAO completed that report last month, and I asked for unanimous consent to insert it in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. GAO's audit determined that a DOGE employee was inadvertently granted temporary access to create, modify, and delete data from the payment system. Mr. Secretary, you failed to impose basic safeguards that left millions of Americans' personal data vulnerable to unauthorized access and abuse. And so my question for you is, do you take responsibility for that? And what specific measures, if any, have you taken afterwards to protect the affected individuals' data and rebuild confidence in your department's handling of sensitive information?
Again, would you care to look up what does inadvertent mean?
Have you taken, but you're in charge. You are responsible for this. Do you take responsibility for that? Do you take responsibility?
I will take responsibility.
Okay, and then
again,
what has been done to make sure that can never happen again?
Congresswoman, it was read-only. They had no ability to edit.
What has happened to make sure that never happens again?
We have, just as we have at the IRS, we have tightened up all protocols on systems.
I guess that's not very specific, but the GAO also found that a DOGE staffer sent an unencrypted file containing USAID payment information and individuals' names to external DOGE personnel at the General Services Administration. Soon after, it was reported no disciplinary action was taken, despite the employee's failure to protect federal and non-federal employees' sensitive personal data and comply with security requirements. So again, Mr. Secretary, when employees who violate IT security rules are not held accountable, what does that message send to agents? And why don't you hold someone accountable?
Why are you bringing up USAID with me?
Because a DOGE staffer, GAO found that a DOGE had payment information. payment information.
USAID, I do not oversee. I wear many hats in this administration, not one.
And this is still, this is a file containing payment information. Are you not in charge also of the Treasury?
That has USAID, that has nothing to do with us.
But payment information has nothing to do with it.
Again, it was not sourced at the Treasury. Why are you bringing this up with me?
So GAO provided 6 recommendations to address identified weaknesses, including ensuring staff agree to comply with IT security rules and configuring systems to detect and prevent the transmission of unencrypted payment data. The report states that the fiscal service, again, the fiscal service, part of your agency agreed that 3 of the recommendations, or agreed with 3 of the recommendations and did not state whether it agreed or disagreed with the other 3. So, Mr. Secretary, can you confirm Treasury's position? This is part of your purview, that Treasury's position on all 6 recommendations. And if you agree that they're warranted, please let us know. And if you disagree with the recommendations, please explain why.
Again, I don't have a copy of the recommendations in front of me. Your office did not share them in advance. We'd be happy to get back to you. That we would obviously agree with the ones where we've already agreed.
So I hope that you understand that these are findings from the GAO about ensuring that information is protected. And again, we have seen access to taxpayer information leaks. What are you doing to address this? And are you taking responsibility? People don't have faith that access has been given against the law.
Well, again, President Trump and his family and employees of the Trump organization, 400,000 people had their tax returns stolen at the IRS.
You are in charge. What are you doing to prevent that?
And
Americans' people's sensitive information has been leaked outside.
Ms. Delvetti, your time has expired.
We have tightened the protocols. We have tightened access.
And you've said nothing specific of what you've done to
Ms.
ensure.
Delvetti, your time has expired.
Sánchez started by establishing the legal foundation that everything else in the exchange was going to rest on, because she wanted to make sure there was no ambiguity about what the law actually requires before she got to the question of whether Bessent's department is following it. And the Supreme Court ruling she was working with addresses the obligations of the executive branch when it comes to spending money that Congress has appropriated and that the president has signed into law. And the core principle the ruling establishes is not complicated or subject to creative legal reinterpretation, but is a straightforward statement that when Congress appropriates money for a specific purpose and the president signs that appropriation into law, the executive branch does not have the discretion to simply decide not to spend it because it disagrees with the policy choice Congress made. And Sánchez asked Bessent whether he was familiar with that ruling and whether he accepts it as the binding legal authority it is. And Bessent said he respects Supreme Court precedent, which is the kind of answer you give when you want to sound like you are agreeing with something without actually committing to the specific implications that agreeing with it would require. Then Sánchez moved to the specific programs where she had documented evidence that Treasury was not releasing funds that Congress had appropriated and that the president had signed into law. And she went through them one by one with the kind of methodical precision that makes it very hard for a witness to escape into vague generalities, because each example came with specific dollar amounts and specific statutory authority and specific documentation of the gap between what the law required and what the department was actually doing. And Bessent tried with each example to find some procedural or administrative explanation for why the money had not gone out, and Sánchez kept bringing him back to the same question, which is that the Supreme Court ruling she had cited does not contain an exception for procedural delays or administrative complexity, but says that appropriated funds that have been signed into law must be released. And she asked him directly whether he believes his department is in compliance with that ruling, given what she was showing him about the specific programs where the money was not going out. The exchange about the specific communities being harmed by the funding delays added a dimension that went beyond the legal argument and into the human consequences of what was happening, because Sánchez did not let the conversation stay abstract and procedural, but insisted on putting names and numbers on the people who were being affected by the gap between what the law required and what the department was doing. And she described specific programs in her district and across the country that were running out of money and scaling back services because appropriated funds were being held up. And she connected those specific local consequences to the Supreme Court ruling Bessent had just acknowledged he respects. And she asked him how he reconciles respecting a ruling that says appropriated funds must be released with running a department where those funds are demonstrably not being released in program after program that she had documented. Hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell because we are covering every single development as it comes. See you in the next one. Stay safe.